President, the world watched in horror as Russia pursued a bloody, full-scale invasion of the sovereign nation of Ukraine. I was in Vilnius, Lithuania with my colleague, Senator Chris Coons, on that cold, dark morning in the airport when reports first trickled out that the war was again starting in Europe. 3 years ago, the Russian invasion of Ukraine was not a partisan issue in the United States. Congressmen and senators on both sides of the aisle agreed on the basic facts. Russia was waging an unprovoked, illegal war and must be stopped at all costs. And for the past 3 years, we have supported Ukraine with the funding it needed to beat back Russian aggression and defend the front line of democracy in Europe. And the Ukrainian people have done just that. 46,000 Ukrainian lives have been lost. 46,000 defending their nation against Putin. We have joined with our NATO allies and many other countries around the world standing by Ukraine. And they have shown an extraordinary courage, a courage for the history books. But it turns out that the new President of the United States, Donald Trump, does not see this the same way as I do, and we have for 3 years. The fact of the matter is this: President Donald Trump is a pushover for Russian President Vladimir Putin. He's always been, and he'll always be. Since Trump took office, he has played right into Putin's hands. The outrageous comments he posted today on Truth Social make that painfully clear. In the post, Trump attacked not Putin for the invasion, but the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, blaming him for Russia's invasion that, as I said, has killed more than 46,000 Ukrainians and displaced millions more. And it's disgusting to say that President Trump called Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, a dictator without elections. Can you believe it? An American president selling out a Democratic leader, bravely defending his country from an actual dictator. Putin, a former KGB apparatchik at that. It is insulting to say that. It is shameful. But from this president, it's no surprise. President Trump is doing nothing more than parroting Kremlin propaganda and spreading lies that Putin whispers into his ear. I could call on Trump to apologize to the people of Ukraine who have suffered so much because of this Russian invasion, but it would be a waste of breath. Let me be clear to President Trump. You don't make America great by selling out our nation and our allies to a Russian dictator. Most of my Republican colleagues know this. I've spoken with them over the years. They've joined me in a bipartisan coalition to be part of the Ukrainian caucus in the Senate. But it's time now for them to speak up. I know they're politically fearful of Donald Trump and his power, that if they say the wrong thing, he, with Elon Musk's money, will come in and take him out in a primary. But there has to be a point where they stand up and say what you really believe and have the courage to do it. I'm reminded of a quote from a fellow Illinoisan, our nation's 16th president. It was 1865. Our nation had been torn apart by the bloodshed of the Civil War. And ahead of his inauguration for a second term, President Abraham Lincoln addressed the nation right out there. He said, quote, "Both parties deprecated war, but one of them would make war rather than let the nation survive, and the other one would accept war rather than let it perish." And the war came. Although President Lincoln was referring to the two factions of the Civil War, I believe it applies here as well. Putin has made war rather than let Ukraine survive, and Ukraine has had no choice but accept war rather than see itself perish. President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people have led that noble effort with strength, fortitude, and determination. As their ally and a fellow democracy, which Putin certainly is not, and as a nation committed to freedom, the United States of America has an obligation to stand by Ukraine, not to appease Putin. Mr. President, on a separate topic, this photo says it all. It shows the world's richest man, Elon Musk, who has not been elected to anything and has taken the greatest pleasure in senselessly gutting U.S. food aid for some of the world's poorest people, somehow or another giving a tribute. I won't even try to describe it here. This month, President Trump and Elon Musk attempted to dismantle USAID, the largest distributor of humanitarian aid on this earth. Musk was gleeful when he said, quote, "We're feeding USAID to the wood chipper." USAID provides clean water in Haiti and Jordan, helps fight malaria and tuberculosis in Kenya and Uganda, and supports human rights programs in Burma, China, Iran, North Korea, and Sudan. It provides economic assistance in Central America to help address the root causes of migration and counter the flow of fentanyl into the United States. And it funds humanitarian operations in Syria, including for security at camps to prevent the resurgence of ISIS, as well as campaigns to counter disinformation from Russia and China, all programs critical to our national security. Not only are these cuts to USAID a betrayal of American values to satisfy the narcissism of Elon Musk, but they hurt innocent people. And they hurt American farmers while we're at it, who for decades have helped provide such critical and strategic food aid. You see, despite the lies by Musk and others about U.S. foreign aid, it accounts for about 1% of our federal budget. 1%. And in fact, they conveniently leave out that billions of these aid dollars actually flow back into the American economy. These programs have broad bipartisan support historically in Congress. They make America stronger, more influential on the global stage, and America, with these programs, is doing the right thing. That is, until President Trump's reckless and illegal freeze on such assistance, already appropriated into law by Congress. Look at this headline. Gutting U.S. aid threatens billions of dollars for U.S. farms and businesses, including American farmers, dealing in rice, wheat, and soybeans purchased as food aid. Yes, I come from a farm state, and I'm proud of what my agricultural people do. We grow some of the best crops in the world. God has blessed us with the land and climate to achieve that. They not only feed the world, they feed the poorest people in the world as well. Not only is the sweeping USAID cut illegal and counterproductive, but it hurts our farmers and people in America, in Illinois, Kansas, Louisiana, Nebraska, Iowa, Texas, Wisconsin, and many other states. American farms supply more than 40% of the food aid that USAID distributes around the world. And now hundreds of millions of dollars worth of such commodities are stranded in ports, rotting away at the direction of the new administration. Talk about waste, DOGE, take a look. You're causing it. Here's what President of the Illinois Farm Bureau said recently, quote, "It's not just food aid to developing nations and the exercise of soft power. USAID has substantially benefited farmers by funding crop research that has produced useful varieties of corn and soybeans over many decades. Some of that research happens at places like the University of Illinois." That's what the president of the Farm Bureau said about USAID programs. But even in instances where American lives and livelihoods are not directly threatened, gutting USAID threatens American safety. USAID-supported programs stem pandemics, help failed states, and displacements from war, threats that don't respect borders. But because of this president's sweeping directive to pause international aid, bipartisan, congressionally appropriated funds to provide life-saving humanitarian aid in places like Venezuela, Iran, and North Korea have ground to a halt. Programs like PEPFAR have been a key example of humanitarian success abroad. It was started under President George W. Bush, As a reminder, a Republican president who wanted to curtail the AIDS epidemic ravaging many parts of the world, including Africa. PEPFAR and Global Fund have saved more than 25 million lives so far. But because of President Trump's directive, it's been halted. Make no mistake, sad as it is to say, people will die as a result of this political decision. In the last decade, USAID clean water and sanitation programs have provided more than 70 million people with first-time sustainable access to clean drinking water, something we take for granted in America, but which really decides a person's fate in the developing world. These programs have a 6-to-1 return in dollars saved in health, economic, and education. But because of President Trump's directive, innocent people across the world will suffer, and America's reputation will be weakened, not made stronger. And American defense officials for generations have supported these programs. These have always been bipartisan programs because they're far cheaper than military interventions and clearly effective, proven so over the years. Trump's first Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, said, "If we don't fund foreign aid, quote, then I need to buy more bullets." When did saving lives of innocent people, strengthening the American economy in the process, and growing our soft power presence around the world become a political issue? Under President Donald Trump and the co-president Elon Musk. Lastly, I want to highlight how lies about USAID have spread online, some amplified by Russia, China, and other adversaries. For example, there's a false video created by a private company which links to the Kremlin, the company with links to the Kremlin, alleging that celebrities were paid by USAID to visit Ukraine. The Russian influence campaign was reposted on Twitter by Elon Musk, no surprise, and became a viral disinformation rallying cry against USAID. But it was false, like so many allegations of supposed outrage by USAID. Yet this kind of nonsense is used by Mr. Musk to justify gutting entirely congressionally appropriated American soft power programs, while many of my Republican colleagues, virtually all of them, sit silently. Nations like China already sense strategic openings under President Trump's decisions to halt U.S. foreign aid. This Senate, Republicans and Democrats, cannot afford to roll over, play dead, and hand over congressional authority on these bipartisan programs and on larger constitutionally designated congressional appropriation powers. Mr. President, I know foreign aid is misunderstood by many Americans. They think it's about 20% of the federal budget when asked. As I said, it turns out to be 1%. I've seen it in action around the world. Some of the scenes that I've witnessed, I'll never forget. A dusty village in India where the children were given for lunch something that my kids would never have touched and yours probably wouldn't either. It was like a dough ball that they used for catfish bait in my part of the world. And you looked at that ball and you think, they're going to eat that? Sure, it's full of good grains and nutrients, but it doesn't look very appetizing. They ate it like it's their last meal. But they didn't eat it quickly. They hesitated and stopped for a moment, bowed their heads in prayer, and then lifted up and started eating their lunch. I asked the person running the program, what was the prayer all about? They said they were thanking the United States of America for sending this food to them, because otherwise they would have nothing. I take great satisfaction in that experience and memory. It says a lot about these programs and what they mean to people around the world, and it said a lot about America, that this was one of our priorities too, that nameless, faceless kids somewhere around the world got something to eat to keep them alive because America cared. That defines America and its values as far as I'm concerned. The notion of, quote, feeding the USAID program to a wood chipper may be a big laugh for Elon Musk, but it's a sad commentary on the values of Mr. Musk and this administration. For goodness sakes, let's stand by American values. A lot of people depend on it. I yield the floor.